Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Carissa, and today on the Technified Teacher, I'm going to share some tips on how to create accessible documents. Let's get started. Alright, so my first tip is to use headings. Now, I'm going to be using a Google Doc to demonstrate these tips, but you could apply these to any word processing program. Alright, so this first line looks like it's my title. So I could make this stand out by applying a bold, by underlining it, by making it a different color. I could even increase the font size, and all of these would be great visual cues that this is the title of my document. But I could also use headings to apply those formats as well. So I'm going to go up here to Styles, and this is where I'm going to find my saved headings. Now you could designate a title and a subtitle, but heading 1 is usually what I like to use for a title. There should only be one heading 1 in your document. All right, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to find my first section. So think of heading 1 as your title and heading 2 as like the chapters of your document. So here I have 5 formatting tips. That's the first section of my document. So I'm going to go up to my styles again, and this time I'm going to apply heading 2. Alright, so again, you're going to see that it automatically added some extra spacing and formatting to the text to designate this as my next section. Alright, and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to apply heading 2 again to my second section, which is something we will also go over in this video, some additional tools that you can use within Google Docs. So now again, you can see it applied the same formatting as it did to the text up here. Now, why would we use headings? For a couple of different reasons. Visually, it makes the text stand out and makes it easier to find sections within your document. But the other added bonus that it creates is this outline. So when you click on this, you can see that now I have spots in my document that I can click on and go to if I want to go directly to that section. So let's say I wanted to jump down to where additional tools for Google Docs is located. I would just have to click on it and it would take me there in my document. So students who are using keyboard shortcuts to navigate a document will find this very useful, as well as students who are using text readers and text-to-speech tools. A lot of times they're also using keyboard shortcuts, and the headings tool will allow them to quickly and easily locate different sections without having to listen to the entire document and try to find things that way. So the other thing that's really nice about headings is that you can save the formatting so that every time you select that heading in a document, it applies the same look to your text. Say this is how I want all of my titles on every document to be. If I go up to Format and Paragraph Styles, and this I'm applying to heading 1, I'm going to update heading 1 to match. So now, whenever I apply heading 1 in a document, just so I can show you, let's apply heading 1 to this one as well. I'm going to go here, and now you can see heading 1 looks exactly how I told it I want my titles to look. So I can do the same for my heading 2. Now I could go down here and change it as well, or I can highlight this, go to Format, Paragraph Styles. Again, this is my heading 2, and I can update heading 2 to match. So now anything in my document that is designated as heading 2 will have the same formatting. So that's how you use headings in Google Docs. Now let's move on to the next tip. My next tip is to create bulleted lists. You can see that I used dashes to kind of indicate bullet points, but I'm going to go back and actually use the bulleting tool, and I'll explain why that's important. So I'm going to remove these for now. I'm going to highlight my first 3 tips, And I can either create a bulleted list or a numbered list. Here's a tip that I want you to think about whenever you're applying bullets or lists. Think about whether a numbered list would make sense. For example, in this particular document, I have 5 formatting tips. So I've already indicated in my heading that there are going to be 5 sections within this chapter, so to speak. So it would make sense to use numbers. That way, if anyone's using a screen reader, they will know exactly where they are within the tips. So if I highlight these, I can click on the numbered list and it'll apply those numbers. Now, this text is actually a subheading of this tip 3. So I'm going to use actually a bullet for that one, and I'm going to hit tab to move it over so that it kind of indents within. Here's my 4th point. And again, I'm going to give this a number. Now, as you can see, it started at number 1 because I added another bullet. So I'm going to click on the number until it highlights itself. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to continue previous numbering. So now it recognizes it as part of this list. Again, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to apply my numbering and I'm going to click on the number until just the number highlights, right click, and I'm going to continue previous numbering. Again, now it's recognizing that it's part of this list. So as you can see now, if a student is using a screen reader, they'll hear 5 formatting tips read aloud, and then they'll hear number 1, use headings. Now they know that whatever they're listening to after that all applies to the first tip. The next tip is to give your hyperlinks context. If you look on this document, I have my 3rd tip here, and then after that I have more text, and then I have this really long link. This will create some problem with someone who might be using a screen reader because remember, it's going to read everything that's on your screen. So instead of using phrases like click here or link, what I would encourage you to do is embed this link directly wherever you would expect a student to click. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to copy this link, and I would expect students to maybe click on the text here, how to use hyperlinks. So I'm going to highlight the text, right click, link, and now I'm going to paste the link that I had just saved and apply. And I'm just going to delete this link and the click here. And now the students will see that it's highlighted, it's blue, so I know that when I click on this, it's going to take me to a different site. And now it makes sense because my phrase, how to use hyperlinks itself, seems like something that I would want to click on. And again, someone who might be using a screen reader or who might be accessing this using different assistive technology tools is not going to be bombarded by a bunch of text that won't make sense because it's a link. Now they'll just hear and see that this is a link that I can click on, and then they can go from there. My 4th tip is to add alt text to images. Now, whenever you add an image, again, thinking about students who are using assistive technology tools, if they come across this image and maybe they have a visual impairment and they're not able to see all of the image or all of the details within it, or they just need more information, they might not understand exactly what the image is showing, alt text will give them that context so they know exactly what this image is. So how you can do this in Google Docs is right click on your image and go down to where it says alt text. Here you can give your image a title, so it will tell your students or whoever is accessing your document exactly what this image is. So this is, I'm actually going to change this to chart of favorite colors. And then I also provided a description of what this chart is showing. So again, this is a pie chart of students' favorite colors. 45% of the students prefer blue, 20% prefer red, 10% prefer yellow, and 25% prefer green. So now anyone who's accessing this who might not be able to see the image or see the information that's provided or understand what I want them to get out of this image, now when they click on it with a screen reader, all of this information will be read to them so they know exactly what I'm expecting them to get out of this image. My last tip is how to use color contrast appropriately and effectively in a document to make sure that it's accessible. Whenever you're using different colors within your document, you want to make sure that there's a high contrast between what's in front and what's in back, so that it's very easy to see and read the content of your document. So for example, if I were to highlight this, if I want to emphasize this point, I could highlight it and use like a blue color. But as you can see, it's very difficult to read the dark text on the dark blue background. This would be a problem not only for someone who might have a visual impairment, but it would also be very difficult for someone who maybe is reading on a screen outside or in bright light. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change and of course use a lighter color. So if I'm using dark text, I want to use a lighter color or a brighter color behind it. Now that might seem kind of common sense, of course, but some other things to think about when you're using color to emphasize points within your document is to not rely on color alone. Again, thinking back to students who might be using screen readers aren't going to read color. So if I just highlighted this because I want to make sure that this is a point that my students really pay attention to, the student who's using a screen reader isn't going to know that that was important because the screen reader isn't going to tell them that this text is highlighted. So a couple of different things that you can do if you want to make sure that a certain point is designated as important within your document, use words to emphasize that. So here I'm going to write in caps, important. So again, if a student is listening to this document, now they have that auditory input to know that this is an important point. And then I can go ahead and use other formatting, again, to visually bring this out. So I might highlight it. I might also change the format of the text itself. I would highly encourage you to use bold whenever you want a certain type of text to stand out. The reason being, if you underline it, it's going to look like a hyperlink. If you notice up here, text that's a hyperlink is underlined, and that kind of designates to someone that if you click on this text, it'll take you to a different tab or a different website. So now that I have this underlined, it kind of looks like it could be a hyperlink. So that might confuse someone who's reading this document. Italics are also another way to make text stand out. However, keep in mind that in some fonts, italic print might be a little difficult to read. So in this case, it's not too bad. The text is just slanted, of course, slightly. But just keep that in mind whenever you're using italics. And if it drastically changes the look of the font, just know that it might be difficult for someone who might have trouble reading or might have a visual impairment. It might make it really difficult for them to see that text. The other thing that I'm going to point out on the document that I started that I'm going to fix right now is keeping in mind how colors are used. Hyperlinks in Google Docs are automatically colored blue. The text is colored blue to indicate that that's a link. Before, I applied a blue font to my heading 2. And now if you look, it's not underlined, but it does make these two sets of text look very similar. And I want them to stand out. I want this to look like a heading, not like a hyperlink. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to change the text color to something different. There we go. And now remember, if I want this to apply to all of my headings, I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go to Format, Paragraph Styles, Heading 2, and I'm going to update Heading 2 to match. So now all of my Heading 2s will now have red font instead of blue font, so it won't be confusing, it won't look like a hyperlink, and now all of the colors within my document have a meaning and make sense. So the same goes for color coding. Now, I am a huge fan of color coding. I love using colors to organize and to make different parts of my document stand out and just to make it pretty. I mean, let's be honest, using color can be a lot of fun. But remember to, first of all, make sure that your color coding has meaning. So again, like I said before, I made all of my headings one color so that as soon as a student sees that it's big red text, they know that it's a new chapter or a new section of my document. My hyperlinks are blue, so whenever they see blue text, they know that that's something that they can click on and interact with. And I've used yellow highlights to indicate text that is important or points that are important. But again, keep in mind that someone who's using a screen reader is not going to hear those colors. So if maybe I have directions in assignment that say, I've highlighted the first things you need to do in red. Remember that someone using a screen reader isn't going to know what the first things are because they're not going to get that information about which text is red. So make sure that you're always embedding text that further support any color coding that you're using so that you're not relying only on color to emphasize text or to imply any meaning. Be sure to use text to support that as well.
Let's go over these tips once more. The first tip is to use headings. You can change the style and format of each heading to match within your document. And as you add headings, it will create an interactive outline as well. The second tip is to create bulleted lists. Use numbers when you want to provide a specific order or number of items, and regular bullets when chronological order doesn't apply. Third, we gave hyperlinks context. Remember to avoid phrases like link and click here, and embed your link within the text instead. The fourth tip was to add alt text to images. This will provide a description and clarifying information for students who can't see or understand the image. The fifth tip was to use high color contrast. Now remember, colors can provide a great visual cue, but be sure that any meaning or emphasis is further supported with additional text.
Now I want to highlight a couple of additional Google Doc tools that can help you with accessibility. The first one is a Google add-on called Grackle Docs. Now what Grackle Docs does is it looks over your entire document, checks it for accessibility errors, and lets you know what you might need to fix or improve to make it even more accessible. So let's test this out. I'm going to go to the document that I originally used. I'm going to go to Add-ons, Grackle Docs, and I'm going to launch. And now what Grackle Docs is going to do is it's going to check over my entire document and tell me what I've done right and what I might need to fix. So again, document title is required. It's telling me that images should have alt text. So in this document, I do not have alt text on my image, so I need to remember to go back and add that. It also gives me some other tips on things that I can do with other images that might be embedded. Headings. I haven't added any headings to this document, so it's reminding me that I need to use headings. If I had a table, it also provides information about making tables accessible, as well as other landmarks within your document. This is only a one-page document, so I'm not too worried about this, but if you have documents that are several pages long, you want to make sure you have things like page numbers so that a student knows exactly which page out of how many they're on. And it also gives you other information about just the general content. So here again, we see high color contrast and just different formatting tips that you might want to look at. Everything else looks good. So going back to my document that I fixed, and it's going to go through and it's going to check. Again, it's telling me that a document title is required, so this might be a good time to go up into my header and add a title there. My images have alt text now. All of my headings are being used correctly. I don't have any tables. Again, it's telling me that headers and footers should be used. I'm not worried about that in this case because it's only a one-page document. So that's Grackle Docs. It will be a good place, a good jumping off place, and in checking to make sure that the documents you're sharing are accessible. All right, the other tool that I want to highlight is Natural Reader. This is an extension for Google Chrome, and this is a text-to-speech tool. So it will read text on a Google Doc or on a website. So this is something that students who are using text readers or screen readers might be using. And the reason that I would recommend this tool is to listen to your document so that you can hear how a student who is using a screen reader would experience your document. So like I talked about before, things like lists. Maybe listening to a list, you realize that numbers would be really helpful, so you can go back and add those. Or just hearing how the student is going to interact with things like images or hyperlinks within your document. If you listen to your document read back to you, you can see how that student would experience that using that text reader. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found these tips helpful and that you're able to apply them right away to create documents that are accessible for all of your students. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos and tips on how to use technology tools in the classroom. Thanks. Have a good day.